We'll start with some introductions, Jamie.
It's perfect, yeah. So, Jamie Logue, guys, thanks for joining us today. I think we've just gone to the next slide, actually. Just before we get into intros, what we actually want to share with you today is taking you through how we have and how we can digitise the client onboarding experience. Just a quick intro, I'm Jamie Logue. I'm actually head of financial services, that's the wrong job title, but head of financial services delivery in the Incremental Group. Incremental Group is a Microsoft partner and Inner Circle partner that focuses on digital transformation using the entire Microsoft ecosystem. So modern workplace, Azure, right down to business applications. I'm fortunate enough today to be joined by Richard Gaster from Microsoft. Richard?
Unfortunately or fortunately. So, Rich Gaster, I'm the business application specialist at Microsoft. So I cover all things SaaS solutions that we can do for our financial services customers. Been doing that since the pandemic started, but before that I spent 12 years working for NatWest and Metro Bank client side. So I've got quite a UX and CX experience and lens on things to try and help shape how our technology can help our customers.
Perfect.
So while we're here today, we've got a few key points. Industry priorities, so what drove the use case we're going to talk about today and why that was a priority. And then we're going to talk about...
We're going to try and give you a case study, a real-life case study of Virgin Money, of how we digitise their onboarding experience to bring some of this to life.
Yeah, and what those key drivers were for Virgin Money. So, what was the need and what was the outcome for there and what were we trying to achieve?
Spot on. And once we understand those drivers, how do we shape a new onboarding journey? We've got the as-is. How do you go about creating a 2B?
Yeah, and then how Jamie and team then went and delivered that.
Spot on. And what lessons we learned along the way. We'll take some of that intel we've got as part of the project and just kind of relate some of that back to you guys.
Yeah, and my favourite part, return on investment. So any transformation, you need to make some money or increase customer service scores or customers. So we'll go through that.
And finally, we'll just touch on what opportunity exists out there in financial services through technology.
And then hopefully we'll get some questions from you. So we'll go through some Q&A at a time as long as we have time. Try not to go too much. So we talk about the priorities, and again, this digital onboarding experience really was driven from the pandemic, 2.5 years ago, the need to be not just serviced digitally, but onboarded digitally. So we come from a position where Virgin Money, our example, couldn't onboard business customers digitally. Yeah. So when things closed, their shop closed and they were not going to achieve any growth and actually lose market share as a result of that. So the big shift was customer engagement. How do we engage with our customers and how do we onboard our customers and allow us to continue buy our goods and services through digital means? And then, our favorite word, organizational productivity, which is teams, right? We all live and use in teams the majority of the time. So how do we then connect the dots between different SaaS solutions and teams where our guys are working to make sure that we are, productive at home, in the office, remote working, and, between clients, customers, and across the organization. We talk about value creation, we talk about return on investments and changing your service. So using it as an opportunity not just to transact with us in a different channel, but actually, change the way and increase our services and stuff as well. And then FS is all about risk management and security. So, scaling that and doing that in a secure way, which we'll touch on as well. Some stats to pull out. So what we're looking at is, the personalized customer experience is an expectation in all industries, and that doesn't change anywhere. But how empowered are, our customers or financial services to actually deliver that? There's a lot of legacy systems. There's a lot of back-end stuff that the customers don't always see that creates lots of challenges around that. And that's where we try and integrate and collaborate systems or build something new to be able to do that. So, 96% of customers will leave a business after a bad experience. But I use the example of if you have a good experience, you'll tell one person. But if you have a bad experience, you'll tell 10. So it's really just having that, whatever you do builds or decreases your brand value. And we'll touch on this point later as well, but 53% of contact center agents don't have visibility of the customer they're serving, so having to repeat questions, not knowing who's in front of them. So we've got customers that expect us to know who they are, know what we want, know all of our history and know all about us, but only half of our agents out there can actually deliver that at that time. They're on 8 or 9 screens or 8 or 9 different bits of software. So we'll go through those in terms of how we deliver on those service parts.
Perfect, thanks Richard. And what we talked about is the fact we're going to take you through a case study today, guys, to see how we did go about creating a digital onboarding journey. We're going to use Virgin Money as that case study. Virgin Money is one of the top 6 UK banks, and they came to us with the vision of, I'll leave this out, disrupt the market and deliver an industry-leading straight-through onboarding process for their business bank and BCA customers. So that was the dream. What we're going to try and convey to you today is how we made that into a reality.
Yeah.
So we've got the 9 key drivers Virgin Money had when they came to us for this project. We'll not read all of them out. We'll go through a couple with me and Richard here. So you've got enhanced the customer experience. You know, we're aiming for this disrupting the market, creating a first-in-class, best-in-class customer experience onboarding journey. That needs to live up to the Virgin brand as well. So that was definitely the heart of this. You've got enhanced reporting there. That was key. That was key that we could give ourselves management intelligence that's actionable so that people can spot areas in the journey that, you know, where is there blocks in the funnel, where is there high dropout rates to the customers, where can we make improvements? Having that in real time means that this isn't a one and done project. It's not an MVP that never sees a phase 2. You can spot where you can improve and continue to implement.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about market share growth. We spoke about return on investment earlier. You know, market share growth will be the opposite. If they didn't digitally transform and allow digital onboarding, they would have lost market share because they were unable to actually onboard customers. So then it transacts to go from losing business, actually, how much can we increase? Not just digitally onboard, but how do we do it the Virgin way and do it the right way? And then straight through decisioning. It's that automation piece. It's making sure that, and we'll touch on it on ROI later, but it's just about how many clicks through to an account, you know, how much stuff can we automate without human interaction? And that's like a key driver for these guys.
Spot on. So how did we go about shaping a new onboarding process? So we started off with the basics. You know, anyone involved in IT will know these 2 steps, which is document the as is and identify the pain points in there. It's exciting to look at blue sky thinking, getting your post-its on the wall, coming up with great ideas. But until we learn from what's there before, we're potentially going to make the same mistakes again. So really understanding what's good about what's being done right now and what's bad, take the good and learn from the bad. That was key.
Yeah, that's it. And then once we know where we are, you know, where is the competitors? So we knew that we were at a disadvantage in this project because there were others that could digitally onboard at that point. Yeah. So not only do we need to keep up with the Joneses, but then how do we exceed that? So do your market research, understand what our customers are experiencing elsewhere, but then also how do we make that more personalized to the Virgin brand, and think about that blue sky thinking about how can we actually do it better, do it differently.
Spot on. And that blue sky thing, and that gives you a North Star, it gives you a blueprint, not something that necessarily needs to be stagnant and can't change, but it gives you something to aim for. And what we did with that is layered it back on that existing process, make sure finally that what we've created is better at each stage of the journey. We've then got the idea of defining MVP, you know, minimum viable product. That is it's a large undertaking to make sure you're taking on the right MVP, but what we did at that point is we looked at the complexity of the customer journey. So I'll skip to this slide actually. This is showing you our MVP and our roadmap for Virgin Money. This was a balancing act of how can we get something in quickly, but still get return on investment. So we looked at the customer types and the overall customer statuses in Virgin Money and came up with the idea that single director limited companies had a large volume of applicants coming through. But actually, the journey to get from one end to the other wasn't the most complex. So we've done that for our MVP and we've got some ROI that we'll share with you today. From there, we built on it with putting additional customer types in, additional product offerings, and enhancing the journey with those areas we spotted in MI. Right now, we're in the process of building a branch in that journey for existing customers to come through it. So what did we create in the end? You know, it's a busy slide. That's what I've seen some faces there. It's a busy slide. I'll not go through each of these individually, but what did we create? What did we ultimately shape? This is a flow of our MVP system that we put in place. It starts off at the Virgin Money website where a customer can come, read some brochureware, read some copy, and decide, I want to apply for a business current account. They'll click a button to say apply. That'll take us to our journey. This is where our journey kicks off in Microsoft's Power Apps portals. That'll be a seamless transition for the customer. They'll feel that they're still on the Virgin Money website, but all the information they're going to enter from here is captured in our system. The first thing we'll ask them to do is search for their company name. So they'll come in and say, hey, I'm LH Hydraulics. We'll auto-populate that from a call from Company's House to finish off the customer name, and then we'll grab data for them. The aim here is obvious. We don't want to ask customers information that we could get externally, so we'll just present that back to them and say, hey, is this you? From here, we'll do some validity checks to make sure this customer's right for our journey and not one of the as-is processes, and we'll move on to authenticating the customer. We use multi-factor authentication using one-time passwords so that anything that's entered by the customer beyond this stage is secure. It also means that they can retrieve their application at a future date if they need to do so. From there, we move on to personal data capture. So anything we can't source externally, we'll ask the customer a few more questions about themselves before running through KYC checks, which is ultimately, are you the applicant that we think you are? Do you belong to this company? We'll then move on to, providing that's been passed, move on to the business data capture stage, where we're collecting more information about the business that isn't publicly available, ultimately, in a secure manner. We'll only ever ask the minimum amount of questions, so it'll be as streamlined as possible. Based on how they've answered previous questions, we'll adapt the questions we're going to ask them down the line, so it's minimal. Well, then, at this point, the customer can submit their application. This is when the more automation part kicks in. So they submit their application for real-time decisioning, ultimately. In real-time decisioning, there's 3 options. We can reject the application, we can approve the application, or we can refer it, meaning it needs to go to an agent in the background for a 4 eyes check, just because we didn't have a definite answer on that. If the customer is referred, they'll have a screen presented to them. They just say, hey, we've got your application, there's nothing else for you to do, but we will get back to you with an SLA to say if you've been accepted or rejected. Because this journey you're looking at is built on Power Apps, its back end is Dynamics 365, which means automatically once a refer decision is made, it will drop into a queue for an agent to pick that up and process it. That agent will have all the information they need to process that case. They'll see all the information that's been collected, they'll see the factors that were made in the decision to refer the customer so that they can make as easy a decision as possible. Once they decide in Dynamics, it will go straight back in this automated flow. If the customer is rejected at this point, they'll get a screen just saying you've been rejected, and they'll get a follow-up email to just make sure that they've seen that screen. If they are approved, it sets off a daisy chain of events ultimately. At that point, in real time, we are creating the customer in the back-end systems of Virgin Money. We are creating an account, we're opening that account, we're issuing a debit card, and we're registered from online banking, which means ultimately the customer has clicked submit, and 5 to 10 seconds later, they're getting a screen showing them, hey, you're a Virgin Money customer, here's your account number and sort code. You can log into internet banking right now if you want to. That screenshot's slightly different because it says welcome back at the top, apologies. So yeah, look, we've had anecdotal evidence from customer feedback that customers came at that first step in the journey and 8 minutes later have been leaving with an account number and sort code, which is something that's much more akin to a personal banking experience than business banking. So how do we deliver that? What was the technology?
Yeah, so you mentioned earlier that the portals is what we use. It's part of the Microsoft Power Platform, which covers a variety of tools such as portals or web pages. And when you talk about speed and time to market and return on investment, the Power Platform, and in this case the portals that they used, were really much low code, no code. So there's not as much development or pro dev need. Yeah. You could have a fusion team of the business users building that development, going through with dev guys as well to make the more complex journeys as well. But they were able to get quick return on investment, easy delivery through enterprise scalable, low code, no code technology. So it's a really good use case for that.
Perfect. Just to give you a flavour of the overall design, we have a fairly sky-high architectural overview here to just show you the building blocks that were in place here. So you can see from this diagram, Dynamics and the Power Portal, those were at the heart of this journey. They had full auditability of that journey, they controlled the workflow and ultimately monitored the customer experience. In order to enable real-time decisioning, we integrated to an external cloud service that can give us data and have configurable decision engine in there. I'll not mention the one we use with Virgin Money for IP purposes, but there's plenty out there. Experience, Dugel, Equifax, they all offer these services. We also had to integrate the bank systems in the back end in order to create customers, check existing customers, set up accounts, and we've done that from a microservices approach so that we built up microservices for each of these actions so that if you need to reuse them across the bank estate, you can. It's not just built for this onboarding purposes. So what were some of, and these are not the exhaustive list of lessons learned, there's a lot of lessons learned, but what were some of the lessons we learned as part of this implementation for this case study? We have reduced the question set. This is a fairly obvious one. You want a good customer experience, you need to ask them to click as little times as humanly possible. The reason we're calling it out is that this needs to be the heart of all the discussions you're having up front and throughout the project. So when you're speaking to legal teams, risk teams, design teams, security teams, that needs to be part of the topic because it's a balance. It's a balance of having a slick process that's also regulated. The explained, so on top of that, reduce the customer question set. Explain why you're asking the customer any questions that you are. This was a big takeaway we got from customer testing. Fundamentally, people are much less likely to be frustrated of you asking them more questions if you're telling them why you're asking the question. You know, that's a small change to have a wee tooltip on your website to say, hey, we're asking you this because we need to do this. But it makes a massive impact in the customer experience. That was a great learning for us. And then the other piece, which we've not done with Virgin Money, we've done with other institutes, is embedding a chatbot on that portal. So if someone gets stuck along the way, they're not having to call in. If it's 12 at night, they're not having to just hold their application. It could be a virtual agent that's got automated responses, or it could auto-route into an agent in the background if need be.
That's it, something I'll touch on later as well.
Absolutely.
Delivery efficiency. So as a vendor, we often find that there's a lot more discussion now around, implementation partners really customizing our platform to get really specific on the use case. Yeah. But more and more in terms of being scalable, quick and reactive, the more you can do out of the box and use the out of the box technology, the quicker you can react, the quicker you can go through and make those changes or develop the platform. So that, at the moment, that's a big balance and something that we're pushing to make sure that can you adapt your business case to fit the out of the box solution so you're able to scale and change things much quicker.
Spot on. The final one I might talk around is governance around this. What were lessons learned in there? And really for us, we used Agile, which was pretty prominent in the industry just now. We used Agile, and I think the way to really enable success in there is have squads that are set up for success and that they can make quick decisions. They can make decisions with delegated authority, and they can be creative. And the way to do that is embedding specialist resources in those squads. So legal team members, people that are writing copy, designers, all in squad, all in war rooms coming up with the same design, all going on the same path, and having delegated authority for the product owners to make quick, decisive decisions. That's how you get a better product at the end of this. It's not setting something up front 6 months before. It's saying, how do we change as we go, as we meet new requirements? And to enable that leadership, not only adopting those ways of working, but championing them, that really sets it off.
Yeah, another big lesson there. So return on investment. So what did it mean for the customer? What did it mean for the P&L of the bank? And the first thing was customer acquisition. We spoke about market share at the beginning of the session. In this situation, their customer acquisition moved from 5% to 34%. So a huge increase in the amount of customers they acquired in a very short period of time, which just shows, the need was there, right? So we met a demand quite quickly and quite successfully.
Spot on. And to go along with that, 20% of the applications going through this journey are straight through. So they get a real-time decision on the back of that, which is no colleague involvement. That's 20% of FTE savings in there, but it speaks highly to just how much better that onboarding experience is for the customer, because that's 20% from a baseline of 0.
That's right, and when me and Jamie were putting this deck together, we were talking about, the experiences, and we said 50% of accounts open within 5 days, but I shared an experience of myself where I own businesses outside of my day job, and I had to open an account in a bank which will remain nameless, but they couldn't digitally onboard me, and I had to wait 8 weeks for a half-an-hour phone call. And then once I had that phone call, they then ran all these straight-through decision checks manually behind the scenes. And after 13 weeks, I got a sort code and account number, which was, frustrating to say the least, but which brings us on to.
Absolutely, and it just speaks to it. Yeah. For those people going straight through, it's a 10 to 25-minute journey end to end, which, you're talking minutes, not weeks, which is pretty exceptional.
Huge. So
what opportunity exists out there through technology?
That's right. So, what we've gone through so far in today's session is we've gone through how do we allow customers to buy or, use our products and services through digital onboarding. You mentioned about the lessons learned around chatbot, and definitely that's where I've spent the last 12, 18 months is definitely going through how can we, now we have the customers digitally, how do we service them and help them staying in that digital channel so they don't need to come? It's a digital first, human next approach, and that's something that we've really spent a lot of time on. So we spoke about chatbots, we've got Power Virtual Agents. The fact Power at the beginning of it means it's part of our Power platform, which means it's low-code, no-code technology, which is like drag and drop intents to go through and create these customer journeys quite quickly and rapidly, and something that we're seeing a huge amount of in FS and beyond, really. And then once you're with that chatbot, and there is something that it can't help with, it's, it can hand off in an omni-channel way to the right person. So the omni-channel solution and what we call unified routing it goes through to that department or the right person because the chatbot knows where it needs to go and it will direct that call. And that's been a massive part of, where we've gone post-COVID is really around omni-channel engagement. And what we're seeing now with our acquisition of Nuance is that conversational IVR, which is on there as well, which takes us on to the next one around personalizing and safeguarding, customer interactions. Nuance's Gatekeeper does biometric authentication. So whether you're coming through voice channel, which you can do on our technology now, or you're coming through our chatbots, there is all this extra authentication and anti-fraud stuff you can do to make journeys smoother, safer, quicker and easier. And the return on investments that we're seeing coming through that acquisition is huge. So, most of our time now is how are we servicing them, how are we looking after them, and when we do need to speak to that human next approach, how are they? And that brings us on to that agent productivity. We spoke about 53% of agents cannot see their customers' details. So when you do get through to an agent, they don't have all that information in front of them. They might be repeating questions that they did to get through to that agent, right? So now having that efficiencies and having that straight through authentication through a bot or through a different channel can really bring you in on a smoother, happier experience. And when it's not so happy, we can give sentiment analysis on chats to say whether that customer's a happy or a sad customer, so that agent can be prepared for that incoming piece. And you'll also get a transcript of those chats as it gets transferred through to you. Yeah. And that's what we're finding now is that can also then produce knowledge-based suggestions. So what can we pull from the knowledge articles within the bank, for example, that can actually arm that agent so when they do get through and they've got an angry-faced customer coming in, they can be empathetic, they can be understanding, and actually the system's automated knowledge bases that they think could actually help the customer be served immediately. Teams collaboration, and collaboration's like the next way now. So I mentioned earlier, we live in teams, well, I certainly live in teams, and it's bringing all of these softwares and technologies to within teams. And Teams integrates with technologies far outside of our own stack, but when we have portals, chatbots, Dynamics case management, all surfaced within Teams, these agents or customer service representatives can service their customer from the place where they operate, which is within Teams. And as we are now expanding and pushing out our digital contact center, which is our big bet now, we can do voice and IVR, we're really going all the way from onboarding to customer service to digital contact center, all through our technology. So as a corporation, that's where we see the opportunities lie. That's where we're investing a lot of our resources into now. So we can see that, as you see on the picture there, you've got your contact center liaising with the organization and beyond, all through our Power Platform and Teams. So that's where we are.
Perfect. Right, thank you so much, guys, for listening to us. Is there any questions out there? How was the time? I don't know.
I am aware that we are the session before lunch, so we can happily stay into the lunch break is all I wanted to say, so if there's plenty.
Thank you very much for that. That was really interesting. I just wondered, you touched on an example, for example, of the fraud checks that, in life, so like the voice biometrics, for example, but just interested at the initial onboarding, what anti-impersonation checks specifically that were introduced for Virgin Money, if you're allowed to say.
We can't mention the vendors that we used. There are tons out there. There's TransUnion, there's WhoYou, they all exist in that space. It was ID&V and 3DS checks that were performed in there, but we can't get into detail around the vendor apologies.
But I think in terms of the portal, there's over 850 connectors to our Power Platform. So whatever software or technology you're using to do those things, it integrates quite smoothly, quite easily. So if you want to pick up offline, if we can do any more on that. But.
Yep.
Hi guys.
Hiya.
I'm Louise. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Louise.
You said in your really busy slide, you're really busy slide.
I know one.
KYC, and then you said 20% went straight through, which means 80% didn't.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how much of that 80% is KYC problem related, and how is there a human at the end of that needs to fix something?
Yeah.
quite a significant, I don't have the exact number, but quite a significant amount, which is why it's part of that, the two that are red that we hadn't got to on the roadmap slide, we are changing the KYC provider to do much more of a sort of password scan, something essentially that allows you to really identify who they are without relying on external data, so facial recognition, because you've got a higher rate of getting through that KYC.
And there's still a challenge though, right, of companies' house data isn't always correct. So
that's it.
So my experience in commercial banking, as in technology, is always the trading address or the director's address is the accountant's. So when it's coming through to our systems, there's no match, and then that creates the exception, which then goes through the exceptions process.
You need to have a check.
Yeah. So yeah, there is a bit of that. Let's try and pick up.
And just one more, as techie people, how do I go around the chatbot? I want to speak to the human first off. What do I have to type in?
So you don't need a virtual agent on a chatbot. You can have a chatbot that goes directly auto-routing to agents in the background. The virtual agent takes some pressure off them, of course, but if you have your reasons for not needing it, you can just set it up that it goes straight to agents.
So so it could just be omni-channel. So it could just receive it and then route it to the right agent immediately.
Yeah.
I just meant generally, like on ASOS or one.
That's it.
Yeah,
all right. Yeah, I don't know.
They'll determine those journeys, right? Yeah. So they'll determine how much they want to try and be in self-service, and they'll determine how much they want to go to an agent. Generally, it's about reducing the FTE pressure and doing self-service, but there's nothing stopping an organisation going straight to an agent.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks very much.
No, thank you.
Can I suggest if there are any more questions, folks, that we grab them up over across lunch?
Perfect.
Thank them one more time, please.
Thank you.